name is Graham Elwood. So I want to address a day or two ago about a mask suggested by a Patreon supporter, Karen Sheets, and I found out that that was not true. My girlfriend found out that it was on Snopes, that it had been completely debunked, and I'm going to read from that article, the Snopes debunking article, and I'll put a link to that below. And I want to say, first of all, this was completely my fault. I should have done more research on this. It's not Karen or any of you guys that are Patreon backers that suggest articles. I need to I need to do thorough research. So all I can say is, it's just me, and my girlfriend has a full-time job, and so we're doing the best we can. And one of the things that, as this channel grows, I will hire someone to be a researcher and to make sure that doesn't happen again. So what happened, I pulled the video down. It was not pulled down by Google or YouTube. So I pulled it down. Once I realized that it was wrong, I didn't want a video up there of me purporting stuff that wasn't factual, that was just flat out incorrect, and saying that it was true when it wasn't. So first I'm going to go into just how the Snopes article and how it was debunked. But I also will say this: the fact that this was incorrect doesn't take away from any of the things I said about how awful racism is in this country and how we need to own up to it. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But so, as I've promised to all of you, I'm going to just be honest with you. So if I screw up I got nothing to hide here. I read an article and I didn't do the research, and I got duped. I got tricked by the internet, as did Karen. So Karen Sheets, don't feel bad. we all fall victim to clickbait. But here's what happened. So the article was mass grave of dozens of tortured black men found in deceased KKK leaders' estate. And that was the claim, and the origin came out on June 30th, 2017. That was a prominent Ku Klux Klan leader in Jackson, Mississippi. So here's what Snopes did to go through to debunk it. Right off the bat, those who read the story might notice several discrepancies. For example, the purported homeowner discovered some leg bones, which begs the question how investigators could know, especially very early into what would clearly be a long and involved identification process, the ethnicity or ancestry of the victims by their bones. It is possible for forensic anthropologists to gather clues about the ancestry of long dead people and build biological profiles, a summary of a dead individual's sex, age at time of death, stature, and health from bones alone. But teasing out information from human remains takes time and care, and investigators are highly unlikely to be so definitive so early in the recovery process. So yeah, the article said that they found it last week, June 30th, and within a couple days they had all this information, and so that is correct. So it would take a forensic anthropologist it would take them probably weeks to come to these conclusions. You can come to these conclusions about, as they said, but it would take more time. So also, we could call, so also the article says that there's an Adrian Cartwright from the Federal Bureau of Investigation spokesman named in the piece to confirm the numbers. But alas, no Adrian Cartwright exists in the Jackson, Mississippi FBI office, nor does anyone by that name work as a national spokesman for the agency. Furthermore, the photo that was used that showed all the skeletons or bones in the grave was actually from a May 2016 news piece about the efforts to exhume and identify victims of narco-terrorism in Mexico. And then also all right, so that was the image was and then there's another image that was also taken from an August 6th from 2012 feature in Current Archaeology. Then the mention of the person who used to own the property, Eldon Lee Edwards, was a real person. an automobile paint sprayer who helped rebuild the U.S. Ku Klux Klan in the 50s and was known as its imperial wizard until its death of a heart attack in 1960. But Edwards was from Atlanta, Georgia, not Jackson, Mississippi, and they were unable to find any evidence that he owned real estate in either state. The Jackson Telegraph is not a real newspaper, and this is something I obviously could figure out, any of us could figure out within a couple of clicks, but I didn't, which again is my fault. If you go into the this is one of the telltale signs. When there's a fake website that's purporting to be an actual newspaper from like a local newspaper, you click on the contact info and there's usually just an email address. If it's a real newspaper, they'll have an address, they'll have phone numbers, there'll be a switchboard you could call, that kind of stuff. But one of the things it brings up too in the article in Snopes, while the story is false, racially biased serial murders are not unbelievable and not without precedent. For example, they talk about Jeffrey Dahmer was known to search out black men in particular, which is thought to be one of the reasons that the murders he committed were not initially taken seriously, as the Christian Science Monitor reported in 1991. So that's the debunking of it. And I'll try to do a better job of that in the future, you guys. As again, it's a time issue, but it is getting better. And I am very proud of this show and how much it's grown. I started in January 2nd with 164 subscribers. Now I have, I think, almost 4,000. And the Patreon has grown, and we've been able to do really cool things, which is great. But let's talk about why it was so easy for me to believe this. Because this is a very racist country. I've driven across this country. I've performed in all different kinds of small towns. I've seen the racism. I've seen the bumper stickers that say stuff like, if you take away my guns, how am I going to kill liberals? Saying you want to kill a liberal. I've seen at like truck stops, this is in California, but I've heard of this all over the US. I saw several times off the I-5 freeway in California, just stopping at, one of those exits off the 5, and there's like a couple of gas stations and fast food. And then there's like a guy kind of off behind one of the gas stations selling flags. And from a distance, you just see like, oh, there's a state of California flag and some like team flags, whatever. The Giants, the Dodgers, oh, okay. And then I went over there closely and saw he's had a Confederate flag, and behind that was an SS lightning bolt flag. So he's selling Nazi flags off of a freeway. That exists. And I've performed in, this really awesome club in Bloomington, Indiana, the Comedy Attic, and you drive through Indiana, you go through Martinsville, Indiana, which is the birthplace of the Klan. I've done shows, I had a friend of mine who's a stand-up comic, and he did a show in Indiana, and he was Jewish, and the other act was a black guy, and after the show, a guy came up after the show and said, yeah, we think you're half a human, and we think your buddy there is not a human at all. After the show, and they're all talking to the people, oh, what a funny show, it was so great, and the guy just said this to them. So I've seen flagrant racism, and, that's why this was, I could think this could happen. And when you have white nationalists, as I've reported on this show, what happened at the church in South Carolina, all of these unarmed black men that have been shot by cops, and none of them are indicted. They're all acquitted. So, again, I apologize for making the mistake, but the racism in this country is real, and it's something that we need to just address and talk about. America doesn't want to face the reality of what it is. It can't admit it's wrong, for starters. No one in position of power can do what I just did and go, oh man, I dropped the ball on that one. I screwed up. I didn't do enough research, that's my fault. And we don't want to admit anything. We don't want to admit we had Japanese internment camps in this country. We don't want to admit the founding fathers all owned slaves. Even Thomas Jefferson, who realized, oh, slavery is wrong, was like, sexually assaulting these women, and that he was a ruthless landowner that owned human beings and treated them like crap. And somehow in there he went, oh, maybe this is wrong. Okay, but that's our country. It was founded by slave owners who, came up with this new idea of a representative democracy, which was pretty amazing. That was cool. We need to acknowledge that was, the idea of democracy was great. The Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, these are amazing documents. And the guys that came up with them, were deeply flawed, maybe some cases full on evil. And so I think that's what we got to do. We got to learn how to admit fault, and we got to admit that America's not that great and have this conversation. It doesn't make you a bad American to say these things. It actually makes you a great American, in my opinion, because America is about in my opinion, the idea of America is perfect. Everybody gets a fair shot. Everybody's treated equally. You have freedom of religion, freedom of speech. These are fantastic ideas. It's never really been fully implemented because there's always been some glaring injustice happening to several groups of people. We had slaves. Women weren't allowed to vote. On down the line. And now it's not a democracy at all. It's a kleptocracy. It's just a corporate war state. As George Carlin said, America's an oil company with an army. So we need to own it. That's what I'm saying. Own it. And thanks for supporting the show. Karen, thank you so much for sending the article. This was a good journey to go on. And, if you click on the Patreon link below, you too can send articles that might be incorrect. So, you're all awesome for supporting the show. And I love your emails and your comments. And welcome to all the new viewers and all the new Patreon backers. You get bonus content. Your names are going to be going in the credits. It's one of the things you get. So, thanks for watching.